So what we're going to do now is talk about key action operators in the Flux class. And these operators, as we've seen for monos, don't actually modify the Flux, but use it for side effects. We talked earlier about doOnNext in the context of Flux. Now we're going to talk about doFinally. So the doFinally operator adds a behavior that's triggered after the Flux terminates for any reason. It terminates normally, it terminates abnormally, whatever the reason is, doFinally gets called. And you can think of this as basically being sort of like a destructor, if you will. It's kind of like sort of like a destructor that you might have in a language like C# or C++. It obviously is not a destructor, but it plays a similar role. It gets called when the Flux stream is basically going away, when it terminates. And this parameter is called when the Flux signal's on error or on complete, or is disposed of by the downstream, which is things that come after it later. So basically, it's a callback. Action operators always are essentially callback, which means it has a side effect. It doesn't make any changes to anything. It just has the side effect of calling whatever action is passed in. By default, doFinally does not operate on a particular scheduler, and you can't change the type or the value of the elements it processes. Here's a very simple example, which actually turns out to be quite useful. If you recall, when we talked about the new parallel factory method that was on the scheduler's utility class, I mentioned how it returned a scheduler that needed to be explicitly disposed of. Otherwise, your program would hang, would not exit, because the thread that's created by new parallel, or the threads that are created by new parallel, are not, in fact, daemon threads. So they will continue to live even after the main thread might go away. So to address this, one simple way to deal with it, which we'll look at further when we talk about the case study here shortly, is to use the doFinally action operator. And as you can see, what doFinally is going to do is it's going to have the subscriber.dispose method called to go ahead and dispose of the subscriber as a scheduler. Okay. There's also a doFinally method or operator that occurs in RxJava that works in exactly the same way. So that's our second action operator in the Flux class. Again, just kind of illustrating how these action operators can be used to good effect with various operations that have side effects.